Okay, so now let's see, we're going to move along to back to Robin, and she's going to introduce our speaker. We're ready to go.
Yes, I get the honor today to introduce Lisa. You know, I have this real passion for labyrinths, and I'm so excited that we found her. Lisa actually came to us through our member, Peter Havlin. And Lisa has really made her life's work around labyrinths. She's an artist. She's a professional labyrinth maker. She's an advanced labyrinth facilitator and a certified mentor, or a certified mediator, sorry. She said she's made hundreds of labyrinths. She's done from room size, canvas, portable labyrinths to permanent concrete installations. Her work can be found internationally in schools and hospitals, churches, and more. She's also the owner of her business called Paths of Peace, and that's in Stillwater, Minnesota, where she's coming to us from today. And she takes care of 15 outdoor labyrinths and a fleet of canvas rentals, it says. So anyway, she'll tell us a little more about herself as we go on later, but please help me in giving a very warm welcome to Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's a delight for me to be with you, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you for Peter for introducing me to Inner Edge. I just like to do some of my work in presenting the labyrinth to you through some PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to share my screen. So labyrinths, ancient paths for modern times. So for some of you who are brand new to labyrinths, and I'm delighted to know that so many of you have experience in walking labyrinths, but some people will confuse the terms labyrinth and maze. If you go to the dictionary, the two terms are used interchangeably, so it's understandable how people might confuse them. So the image at the top is a maze, and you'll see that it has dead ends and places where you have to make choices of which way to go. So the mazes are actually games to confuse and puzzle you. They have tricks and dead ends and choices to be made. You have to use logic to solve the puzzle, and you may become lost and you may never find the goal. Now, labyrinths are quite different from that. They have a single path into the center. But as looking at the labyrinth, it's sometimes difficult to distinguish how it is that you're going to actually get there. But it's quite simple if you simply put one foot in front of the other and follow the path. You are guaranteed to get to the center. It will take you there without any decisions or without any tricks. So the labyrinth has a way of calming us and soothing our spirit. It encourages introspection and contemplation and focus. And you're guaranteed success. You will get to the center as long as you just pay attention to the path, and there is no wrong way. And it helps us to remember that the journey is as important as the goal. Now, most labyrinths are two-dimensional, so you can actually see the goal, but it's not readily apparent how you're going to get there. So the challenge is to let go of that need to figure it out or to be in control and just trust that path. And when we do that, we are allowed to move out of our head and into our heart, our body, our spirit. And it allows us to move into a meditative way of being. It also allows us to move through this meandering back and forth rhythm of the labyrinth that can add to that sense of calming and centering and soothing. Now, some of you might think that labyrinths are new because you might not have heard of them before, but they are actually quite old. And they have a mysterious origin. We don't know who made the first one, where, or why. We know that they are over 4,000 years old. The earliest ones are difficult to date because they are simply symbols carved onto stone. But the same design appears around the world in places, societies, communities that didn't necessarily interact. So that's part of the mystery of the labyrinth. And the design crosses cultures and spiritual traditions. And so we consider the labyrinth image as an archetypal image, as it is seeming to have appeared all by itself for people around the world. So this screen, this slide will show some images of some of the earliest known labyrinths. And you'll see they're just simply carved into stones and found all around. The oldest known ones currently are on rock boulders in the northwest of Spain, in the Galicia area. That's the photo up on the upper left. Now there are many of these on boulders spread out in the fields. The boulders are out unprotected, and you can walk through and find these on your own if you know where they are. Now, to give you a sense of how difficult it is to date these labyrinths, if you look at the image on the lower right, Rocky Valley, England, some archaeologists believe that is as old as the Bronze Age, where others believe it's as recent as the 18th century. Now that's quite a big gap there. And most, as I said, most of these are simply carved into stones and are quite small. They're usually associated with ceremonies or stories. They don't seem to be associated necessarily with evil. The one on the upper right, you'll see some sort of strange looking images there, but it seems to be related to a hunt and some success in some hunting. And the labyrinth in the center on the bottom from India, that looks like it could be big enough for walking, but there are other images on that big rock face of birds and animals, and it does not appear that the intention there was for walking. Again, just another symbol for whatever meaning might be. Now in this slide, I'm trying to offer the variety of ways that labyrinth image has shown up. The indigenous Sami folk in Arctic Russia use labyrinths in rituals for protection. There's several of the indigenous tribes in the Southwest United States adapted the labyrinth to describe their sacred story of creation. And many of those images were woven into baskets. The floor mosaics from first century Roman settlements, very ornate designs, again, not intended for walking, but for a decorative purpose, used as a diagram of a city or maps. One of the Nazca lines in Peru is labyrinthine. And then another image of a coin where the labyrinths were minted onto the coin. So most of the labyrinths that I've shown you thus far are from variations of this particular design, which is called a 7-circuit classical labyrinth. Classical because it's the oldest labyrinth known. 7-circuit because if you follow the path, which is the white space between the black lines, you'll see that you circle around 7 times before you actually reach the goal. So we call it a 7-circuit classical labyrinth. Now this labyrinth is actually quite easy to make if you know the trick on how to build it. So we start out with a series of lines and dots, which we call a seed pattern. It's like planting the seeds of the labyrinth. But through a systematic process of connecting those lines and dots, we'll see how that labyrinth can appear for us. So let's see how this works. And almost like magic, we have a 7-circuit classical labyrinth. So you can see that this didn't require an instruction manual in order to make it. If you just know the trick of how to connect the dots and lines, it's possible to explain how this labyrinth design may have moved around the world. Now, as we move further into the story of labyrinths, in the early part of the Christian era, this labyrinth appeared as possibly the first Christian labyrinth in a Christian setting. And you can see that it's almost like 4 labyrinths put together. There's a little squiggly line that begins the entrance into this labyrinth. And if you were to follow the path of this labyrinth, you'll see that the path spirals in and out of the lower right quadrant, and then it moves up to the upper right quadrant, the upper left quadrant, and then the lower left quadrant before the path brings you into the center. And in the center, there's a word puzzle that spells out Santa Ecclesia in several directions. Santa Ecclesia meaning Holy Church. Now again, this labyrinth is not big enough to walk. It's just a design that was found in this basilica in Algeria. But it's interesting that it includes these quadrants and also a word puzzle, putting the Holy Church at the very center of this labyrinth. Now, as the labyrinth moved through the different centuries, the designs continued to morph and new designs appeared, new adaptations were made. And interestingly, over time, the interest in labyrinth seemed to ebb and flow a bit. There were periods of time when there was a decreased interest in labyrinths, and there's almost as though the labyrinth would go dormant. And then there would be periods of time where there'd be a heightened use of labyrinths. And these periods of heightened use seem to be associated with times when a society or a community was going through a great deal of turmoil, war or plagues, that sort of thing, maybe pandemics. So it seems as though the labyrinth appears for us when we need it most, to soothe, to calm, to offer a place of solace from a frenzied world. And that certainly applies to our society today. So for me, there's little wonder why there's such a great increased interest in labyrinths today. So back to our labyrinth journey through time, in the Middle Ages, labyrinths began appearing, large labyrinths, in the Gothic cathedrals throughout Northern Europe. Now, most of these were walkable size, but there's very little documentation that tells us how they were used. The most famous of these is the one at the cathedral in Chartres, France. Now, you may recognize this design because it has been replicated thousands of times in recent days or recent years. And it is that same design that some of you have mentioned finding at the Grace Cathedral in San Francisco and other locations in your own neighborhoods. About the same time that labyrinth was being built, or the labyrinths that were being installed in the Gothic cathedrals, there were labyrinths being built other places as well. Sweden at that time had more labyrinths than any other country in the world. Over 400 have been documented, most of them being stone labyrinths that were built in seasonal fishing villages out on the coast of the Baltic Sea. These were used for good luck for the fishermen, for ceremonies of courtship and springtime dances and fertility, lots of different uses for these stone labyrinths. And then in the southwest of England, another example of labyrinths being built, cut right into the turf. And these labyrinths tended to be in the center of community places where festivals and gatherings took place. So as we've moved into how we are using labyrinths today, there are some ideas of different ways that we can walk, but a typical walk that some of you may be familiar with involves 3 phases. walking into the center, spending some time in the center, and then following the path to walk it back out again. So that walking in, standing at the entrance and stepping into the labyrinth and walking toward the center is a time to release distractions, to become open and receptive and aware of your present time. Once you reach the center, that's a period for receiving, spending some quiet moments in the center of the labyrinth and receiving whatever wisdom is forthcoming for you there. And then when you're ready to leave the center, you follow that path back out, retracing it from the center back out to the entrance again as a way of integrating the wisdom or the knowledge that was gained in that labyrinth experience. So while there are very few rules of walking the labyrinth, and this process of 3 phases is not a requirement in and of itself, but you're walking with an open heart, a quiet mind, being receptive, following your own pace, and moving in whatever way feels natural. Those are the easiest ways to walk the labyrinth. The challenge with walking a labyrinth is letting go of those distractions and focusing on the rhythm of your breath, feeling the sole of your feet against the ground or your finger in the groove of a tabletop version, to be present, to maintain silence, to listen, to observe, to follow your own pace and move as it feels natural. Each experience is going to be different depending on what you bring to the labyrinth that day. Perhaps ask a question or walk in prayer, sing, dance, twirl if it feels right, but honor that path and those with whom you share it if you're walking with others. And when you reach the center, linger there. But when you feel ready to step out, retrace the path or walk directly off if that is what feels right for you. Just trust that whatever way you do is the right way for you at that time. So in our current state of COVID pandemic, many labyrinth events are canceled. Finding a labyrinth to walk and maintain social distancing may be difficult. Many are turning to finger labyrinths and online virtual finger labyrinth Zoom events. And tracing a labyrinth with your finger is a bit different than walking a labyrinth. So I'm not sure if many of you have had that experience, but let's try this. Using this image, the path of this labyrinth is a golden path. You may follow it with your eyes or your computer cursor, or even with the fingertip of your non-dominant hand. Follow that path slowly into the center. Spend a few moments in the center and then slowly trace the path back out again. You may wish to carry the question or the concern that you formulated in our opening meditation and allow that to inform your walk in this virtual labyrinth. Or you may just choose to simply pay attention to your breath and experience whatever is here for you. So I'm going to invite you to find a comfortable position, to take a few deep breaths. I will start with music, and when the music ends, we will move into breakout rooms to share the experience. So a few deep breaths, and let's begin. Okay. Robin, are you going to introduce our breakout rooms?
Sure. Thank you. All right. So this will be kind of a quick breakout room. We just want to give you a minute to touch in with each other and share what your experience was with that labyrinth. If you had any, your journey in, your time in the center, your time out, just a minute each. We're going to make it really short. Rebecca, can we do that? Can we make that adjustment to a minute each? And then we're going to have a second breakout room that's longer, but we just want to do a quick touch in on this one. Okay, that was fun, huh? Okay, so Lisa is going to go right back into some of her presentation. We have another bit of her slideshow where we'll go a little deeper, and then we'll have a second breakout session right after that.
Now I'm going to take you back through some of the spaces where labyrinths are being found and being used today. So in the last 25 years or so, we've experienced a resurgence of interest in labyrinths, especially as a spiritual tool. And these following slides I have are some examples of my work and the different kinds of places that labyrinths are being quickly into the church settings. Whoops, am I muted? No. Okay. All right, thank you. I just had a little sign that said I was muted. So moving into churches and retreat centers as places for walking prayer and places of solitude. Then the understanding of the benefits of labyrinths as a complementary healing modality were discovered, resulting in the use of labyrinths in cancer care centers, hospitals, and healing centers. And then soon schools and universities began using the labyrinths in problem solving, conflict resolution, recreation, and other curricula. As you'll see, there's lots of different styles and ways that labyrinths are being built. Labyrinths in city parks became multi-purpose gathering places for community activities, including platforms for yoga and Tai Chi, and a playground for the spirit. So that labyrinth on the top is one of my designs that allows two people to walk the labyrinth together side by side on adjacent paths. So it encourages some conversation. So walking a labyrinth isn't always a quiet, silent activity. Now in senior living complexes, rehabilitation centers, and memory care units, labyrinths support residents in their life transitions. Labyrinths can be a crucible for creativity in art centers and studios. And now, especially now, there's an expanded use of labyrinths in residential homes and private gardens as people are staying home more and not able to find labyrinths nearby. Labyrinths are used both as joyful wedding celebrations and at funeral homes and cemeteries to hold tears of grief. They're used to encourage deep conversation in spiritual direction and therapeutic settings. So as a spiritual director myself, I often will begin a session by walking in with my client into the center of the labyrinth. And we may sit at the center to speak and then walk back out again to close the session. I'll do the same using a finger labyrinth where we open, the client will use the labyrinth following the path into the center to begin our session. And then at the end, begin at the center and follow that path back out to integrate whatever we were discussing in our conversation. Using the labyrinths in seasonal festivals and activities can be great fun. I love that picture of the dancing girls on that rainbow labyrinth. And using it in community activities such as this as a food drive where people collected food for their local food shelf and created a labyrinth for us to experience the bounty that would be sent. So over the 20 years that I've been working with labyrinths, I have been playing with them on my own property in Stillwater. I have 5 acres, and my college work is in art with a concentration in design. And when I started learning about the labyrinth as a spiritual tool, I discovered it could be a great way for me to combine my spirituality and my art. So over the years, different labyrinths have appeared, and I've had up to 15 at a time on my property, made out of lots of different materials and all. But soon I was being asked to install labyrinths at area churches and other locations and hospitals, and to make room-sized portable labyrinths for use indoors. Well, here in Minnesota, the outdoor use of outdoor labyrinths is pretty seasonal. So using canvas labyrinths or even permanent indoor labyrinths is a necessity during certain seasons, of course. And now my labyrinth work can be found around the world. This is one we built in Kenya. So along with historical patterns, I've been commissioned to do some unique designs for certain changing needs in our current society. So this one is a pink ribbon labyrinth for a breast cancer survivor support program. The dual path labyrinth, which was originally designed at the request of an elementary school social worker who wanted to integrate the 5 steps of peaceful conflict resolution so that 2 children could walk the path together and move through those steps of conflict resolution. Now this design has morphed over the years and now becomes used as an anti-bullying labyrinth, kindness, teaching kindness, community awareness and connectedness without the words painting into the paths. I was asked to create a butterfly labyrinth for a local school that is a school for the children on the autism spectrum. So this labyrinth looks like a simple design. Sometimes the children will walk with their therapist behind them on the path. And sometimes, I'm told, the students will crawl into the labyrinth like a caterpillar. And when they get into the center, which is sort of cocoon shaped, they'll crouch down into the center for a while. And then when they feel ready, they burst open and fly out like a butterfly along those paths. I'm told that the labyrinths for this school are being used with great success in helping the children to focus and to help to encourage some conversation then after they've walked the labyrinth. And then more recently, Peter Lavin, one of the Inside Edge members who is here, had asked me to create a labyrinth to support his Camino project with the goal of building a labyrinth along the Camino in Spain. Now, with the many challenges that we're facing today in our society with the COVID, I'm finding calls for labyrinths to be even more necessary. And so this Tree of Life design is installed at a local COVID center here in St. Paul, Minnesota, but similar labyrinths are being installed around the country. Dozens of portable labyrinths are being ordered by hospitals in COVID hotspots to provide solace and support for caregivers and first responders. And to VA centers to support our veterans. Here, a suicide awareness and prevention program at Fort Hood. So those just give us few ideas of how the labyrinth is being used in today's world with today's challenges. But the applications for use of the labyrinth are limited only to your imagination. So I think we would like to move again back into some breakout rooms to discuss how you might use the labyrinth in the work or in your life today. So Robin, do you want to introduce the breakout rooms for this?
Yeah, this is going to be great. So we are going to have a little bit longer, 2 minutes each. We'll be in new, different breakout rooms, 3 people together. So we need you to sort of watch timekeeper in your group and make sure everybody gets time to share approximately 2 minutes each. And what we want to really do here, well, why don't you, Lisa, tell us the question you'd like us to bring into the breakout room?
So I would suggest a question about what ways would you like to use labyrinths in your own life or your own work?
Okay, well then we can have some questions. We're going to invite some sharing here about any insights that you had or ways that you might be wanting to use the labyrinth. I know that I was really excited about the anti-bullying one with the little boy. I did a screenshot of that. That seems like a wonderful kind of conflict resolution process that I'd like to be thinking about doing some more.
So everybody should use the participant button, and then there's a little blue hand. So if you do want to share an aha, an insight, your experience, do that so we can more easily see who wants to share. And I see Sharon Warren has already popped her hand up. So let's start with her.
Yeah, unmute yourself, Sharon.
I too was struck by the anti-bullying ones and the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, if, Lisa, have you ever done one politically? Because we're so polarized right now. And would that even be possible?
I've often thought that we should have finger labyrinths at every congressman's desk that they could use before they made big decisions, you know. And I'd love to put one, you know, in the backyard of the Rose Garden. So, but no one has asked for that just yet.
Yeah. Well, we used to have Barbara Marx Hubbard as a speaker, and she had the peace room designed at the White House. You know, it sounds like that could all be part of the same thing.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, who else has a question or would like to make a comment about their experience or ideas for using labyrinths? Yeah, go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, Lisa, you asked about, you know, in the break, what are ideas for using a labyrinth? But I noticed that it seems to, I would be reluctant to just say, hey, doesn't it take don't you need somebody that's initiated or experienced or group? I think there's a labyrinth out here, Diana, that's part of a church.
Yeah,
that I was at one time. Mm-hmm. But, you know, really, isn't it a process of agreement partly? You know, like agreement and somebody who's willing to, you know, be the scout, the leader.
Well, that's a good question, Brooke. The labyrinths don't come with an instruction manual. So, and if you were to bring a group of kids up to a labyrinth, they wouldn't need anybody to tell them how to use it. They would start running through those paths and get to the center and celebrate and have great fun, because that's the way they express their own spirituality. But if you were going to be incorporating a labyrinth walk into, you know, like the spiritual direction sessions or things like that, yes, you can go to training to be a facilitator, but really all you need to explain to someone is that it's a simple path. Follow the path, it'll lead you into the center. Find your own pace to get there. Spend some time in the center and then retrace the path back out to the beginning. And it's really as simple as that. You don't need to do much more than that. Again, you asked about permission giving or asking for people to cooperate that. And I think it's just a matter of inviting people to try it, to see what their response is to it. So, and many of the labyrinths, you know, are open to the public and available. And Brooke, you're muted.
So it could be part of a team building program, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
In the labyrinth with the little boy, you have statements in each path. One could individualize a labyrinth, couldn't you, for different purposes? For instance, I think the Inside Edge is going to have a meeting coming up at Unity of Tustin. Maybe we can incorporate the labyrinth walk. Robin, what do you think of that? That might be.
Yeah, we could invite people to come early or stay later or something if we wanted to be.
And maybe even have some kind of a holiday theme to it about.
But Labyrinth can be a great way to encourage conversation. You know, so if you're looking for ideas for you know, something new or new presentations, carry that question into the labyrinth as you walk and allow your experience to inform you. You'd be surprised how much you can generate new ideas, because the labyrinth works with our own inner wisdom. It just allows us to move into that space and to let those things come forth for us. And you mentioned the words that are on the labyrinth. As I've morphed or used that particular design over the years, that was the earliest first one made in 2003, I think it was. And I've started taking the words out of that labyrinth. Sometimes I'm color coding so that they can, you know, put their own questions at those spots. Teachers are using it to ask questions, so two students can work through, you know, certain questions or ideas within their subject matter. And getting to know your neighbor, the other, so to speak, in our society. So often we're afraid of each other when we don't know enough about them. So asking a series of very simple questions about things that we all experience, like what's your favorite food? What holiday do you celebrate? Those sorts of questions, so we can learn about each other. So a part of community awareness. So yes, that particular design and using a dual path, allowing people to, you know, create their own questions to be used in that, is really working lovely.
Well, go ahead. I'm noticing on the screen that the little boy is walking on one that's a portable canvas one. Is that something that you offer on your website?
Yes. I have a website called canvaslabyrinths.com. And so, yes, I make labyrinths, but I also rent labyrinths. So I have two dozen rental labyrinths that, you know, if you want to rent it for an event or a period, you can do that as well without investing in the purchase of one.
How did you get into labyrinths in the first place? What was your first experience that led you on this wonderful path?
Well, I've had a lifelong interest in labyrinths and mazes, but as a child, it was for games and playing and that sort of thing. So in the late 1990s, I attended a large international conference, and one of the breakout sessions was using a labyrinth as a spiritual tool. So it was when I went into that session and I realized, wow, this is this beautiful design painted on canvas. And so my artwork or my college work in art and design, the design was intriguing to me. But then as I watched people walking it, I got a sense that there's something much more deeper there than just paint on canvas. And so that's when I started really researching labyrinths and built my first labyrinth in my yard 2 weeks later. And that's the beginning of the journey, and it hasn't stopped. Now I'm full-time. It's a full-time profession, and I'm behind on my orders just because I need to be doing other things all the time. So it's really a wonderful journey to be on, and I appreciate being able to do this work because it feels like it's my heart work in the world.
I love the place where you gave us just the beginning with the little dots and the lines, and then you showed us how to create it.
Yep.
Is that something that you discovered in your research, or did you figure that out?
Oh, sure. You can find that lots of places online. So it's not a secret. It's one of the very basic things with the labyrinths. Yeah.
So when you design your own, for instance, like the butterfly design and everything, how do you start with doing something like that?
Well, part of it begins with a conversation, you know, with the client to find out what their use of labyrinths are, how they want to use it. The butterfly design in particular, well, actually there are two butterfly designs, but both of those people wanted butterflies. And so the one that is at the School for Autistic Children, their school motto or their school mascot is a blue butterfly. The Carner blue, which is a butterfly that's facing extinction in our area. And so that was their school's name and mascot. And so it just kind of moved easily into doing a simplified version of a butterfly for that particular setting.
Diana, Judy Linehan has a question, has her little blue hand up.
Oh, good. Judith, Judy, talk to us.
It's more of a statement. I was wondering, Lisa, if you could share with folks how they can find a labyrinth near them. I understand there's a website, and
Yep.
I can't remember.
The next slide I have to show has that on it. And Rebecca's also going to send out a PDF of that slide, so you won't need to, you know, write things down, but everyone will get a copy of some links for information and that sort of thing. So
Thank you so much. I use it every time I travel.
great,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, indeed.
Is there a particular book that you think is the best resources?
Oh. Gosh, there are so many books on labyrinths right now.
Are there? Do you have a favorite?
One of the earliest ones on using the labyrinth as a spiritual tool was written by Lauren Artress, and it's called Walking a Sacred Path. And that one is a beautiful, beautiful book about, you know, incorporating the labyrinth in a spiritual process. She was a canon at the Grace Cathedral, and so her early work was really within the church. There are a lot of labyrinths, or labyrinth books that have been written over the last 2 decades. And it's, if you just go to Amazon and do labyrinth and avoid the David Bowie movie references,
Okay.
you'll find a lot of books there.
Good. Well, that was the person that Judy trained with, I think. So that sounds like that's a very, very good resource.
Both of us did the training.
Lisa, would you like to share with us, you know, what's up next for you? What's exciting? What you offer, so that we all have a really good idea about that.
But this is the resources. Rebecca will send this out to people. But Judy mentioned this website, the first one, Finding a Labyrinth. So if you're looking for a labyrinth near where you are or where you're traveling, there's a great website, a database website of labyrinths. There's over 6,000 labyrinths listed there around the world. It's labyrinthlocator.com. And you can just type in your zip code and search a radius of 5, 10, 15 miles and find all of the labyrinths that are near you. So that's a lovely resource for finding a labyrinth. The Labyrinth Society has a great website that has an entire section on research and publications. If you're interested in studies and research that have been done using the labyrinth, that one, and it also has other information, downloadable things for children, and a lot of good information at labyrinthsociety.org. My 2 websites, Paths of Peace and canvaslabyrinths.com. If you were looking for a product, a canvas labyrinth or a finger labyrinth, those, or a rental labyrinth, you can reach me at those. And then Veritas, which is Lauren Artress's program, that's based just outside of San Francisco. They're offering during this pandemic period weekly virtual labyrinth walks. And so it's on Friday afternoons generally, but you can go to the Veritas website there, veritas.org, and get information on their work and also the calendar that shows when the virtual labyrinth walks will be. So that's a good place to look. And you asked for what's new for me, what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I offer pilgrimages to other international locations, typically we walk from Paris to Chartres in France, and I also lead pilgrimages in Ireland. Obviously, those have been put on hold for me because of the pandemic. And that's a bit sad, but I'm looking forward to a time when we can resume those again. And then I'm getting lots and lots of orders for products, especially now because of the pandemic, when people aren't out or it's difficult to social distance on labyrinths. So if you're asking about finger labyrinths, there's a lot of different labyrinths there. I'm going to stop this share, and I just want to take a moment and show you one of the labyrinths that I have that has a personal story to it. So one of the labyrinth designs I have is these wooden labyrinths that are classical labyrinth, that one that we learned to draw that showed that image on it. About 5 years ago, my husband had a stroke, and he lost all use of the left side of his body. And so he went to some intensive, hospital rehabilitation. And part of his process was that I had brought this labyrinth in for him. And when he began trying to use the labyrinth, he could only use his right hand to steer the finger on his left hand through the grooves of the labyrinth, because he could not use his left hand. But it became a daily practice for him to move into a place where he could actually use both hands, use his left hand on it. And then one of the fun things about this is that this labyrinth comes as a set of two. So you can hook them together. Whoops, I have that upside down. So you can hook them together. So once he got to a point where he could move his left hand independently, connecting the two side by side, one hand in each labyrinth, and trying to move his left hand at the same rate that he could use his right hand. And so that moved him further through that, the healing process, and he's almost fully recovered now.
Oh, good.
So
Oh, great.
those are exciting ways that the labyrinth is moving into recovery and healthcare.
Well, we want to thank you so much for such an enlightening presentation. I mean, it really is stimulating to all of us. We've had some wonderful feedback in the chat.
Diana, can you tell us about some upcoming events?
Yes, we have some fun things coming up. On 10/14, we have an author with her latest book. It's Penny Pierce on the book Transparency, and it's called Transparency and You. She is an amazing woman. I think you won't want to miss this. This is going to be fantastic. Thank you, Robin, for getting this speaker. And then I'm super duper excited about the 28th of October, because one of our earliest speakers, and a man I met in Russia, he was the first person I met in the Soviet Union when we went there before starting the Inside Edge. His name is Alan Cohen. He's written many, many books. He did The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore, was one of his first books. And he is one of the most divine human beings on this planet. I just absolutely love him. He really walks his talk, and he's going to talk about being the light when it really counts. You don't want to miss that morning, I promise you. So that's on the 28th. So let's see, Robin, I think that we also have the gala coming up, by the way, on November 11th. That's 11/11, and Jack Canfield's going to be with us, and Dr. Barbara DeAngelis, and we're going to be celebrating 35 years of the Inside Edge and giving out some awards, and it's going to be so much fun. Okay, so Robin, you take over now. And
yeah, just a few real quick announcements. We are not going to have a speaker forum on the 21st of October because we're doing our annual member meeting. So just all of you members, if you mark your calendar, we'd love to have you participate in that. We'll watch your emails for a survey that will be asking you some questions about moving into 2021. And also, I want to remind all the members to use your gift certificates. We only have about 6 events left for this calendar year for you to use those gift certificates that you got when you joined early in the year. And we also have a promotion for our first-time guests. So especially for you, Judy, you get to come back free on us if you'd like, either of the next 2 events in October. If you'd like to join us again, you'll be getting an email from Rebecca about how to use a promotional code for that. But we'd love to see you back. And so those are my announcements.
great. And Joanne Tatum is showing her cat. Hold it up again. I want so much to thank again, Lisa. You were just a super wonderful speaker. We all learned so much. It was just great. I want to thank our tech team today. It's Rebecca, and Rebecca, you are always right there with all the answers that we need. And the very precious Robin Mullen, who I just absolutely adore. And I'm so grateful that she brought us on to Zoom, and she keeps us on, and she keeps this whole thing going, and she's just amazing.
Let's
So-
have a big thumbs up or clap for Rebecca or for Diana. She's always singing everyone else's praises, but we couldn't do it without you, Diana.
So Robin, do you want to lead us in a closing?
Yeah,
activity?
so we're going to have just a short closing activity, one that a lot of us enjoy, and that's with our spotlighting. So what we'd like is for each of you to have an opportunity to receive a blast of blessings from the rest of us, and then for each of us to practice our giving of our bounty of energy to each other. So the way this works, if you haven't done this with us before, is each picture will come up on the screen of an individual, and it's only about 4 seconds or so, Rebecca, I think. And we'll just, when we see that face, we'll just kind of share, send them some love, blessings, good energy to carry them into their week. And then we'll shift to the next one. So to participate, you need to have your video on. So those of you who don't have your video on won't be shown in to receive blessings. So if you'd like to turn it on just for this little part, that would be wonderful. And if not, we'll just know that you're getting it anyway through osmosis. So I'm going to ask Rebecca to put on some music and take us into this closing process.
Not quite.
I think that's it. I think we've covered everybody.
Yes.
So final words of gratitude. Thank you everybody for showing up and being your beautiful selves. You can take yourself off mute. We can say goodbye to each other, and you're free to leave and sign off. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again,
Goodbye,
Lisa.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Good morning. Learning